Glamfam, Linwood here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to Dutch braid on a head of mannequin hair like this here. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned and let's dive right in. Alright, so this is a tutorial for absolute beginners. So I'm going to be showing you how to do an underhand braid first, because underhand braiding is basically a step before you would get into Dutch braiding. So if you're not familiar with how to underhand braid, stay tuned for this part. If you're already familiar with it, you can go ahead and skip forward. I'll put a timestamp on the video to the part that you'll need to go to. And I'm going to show you how to do it. I suggest that you do it about 10 times and then from there be able to move on into the other style of braiding, just so you can get comfortable with it first. So what we're going to do is separate this hair here into 3 strands. I'm going to do so by taking my index finger and my middle finger here, and we're just going to place those right on into that hair. And it helps us to create 3 similar size pieces in terms of size there. So we're going to go ahead and take it, place those fingers on in there just like that. And then we can separate those strands out pretty easily. Now I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do underhand braiding, because you're going to need a couple of different hand positions when you are braiding your mannequin or your hair, a friend, sister, whatever. So you're going to always, with underhand braiding, be taking these outside strands under the middle piece. So with overhand braiding, you do the opposite. With underhand braiding, let me add a little bit more to this outside piece. With underhand braiding, you're doing under that middle piece. So the middle piece is whatever strand is currently in the middle, and that's going to be changing and alternating. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to start on the right side because I'm right-handed, but you can start on right or left, whatever makes you more comfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by taking that right side under the middle, and then from there we're going to go left under the middle, just like that. So right under middle, left under middle. So you can see with this style here, I'm just kind of rotating my hand position, and that's giving me that braiding technique there. Okay, so you would just kind of keep that positioning going on all the way down and through this style of braid. Now I'm also going to show you with your hands up here like this. The closer your hands are to the braid, the tighter that braid's going to hold. So in this instance, if we say right under middle, notice the braid is not able to slip, so now the whole braid is going to look tighter. Left under middle, right under middle, left under middle. And I want you to take notice, look at how different the braid looks here versus how loose it's looking up here. That's based on hand position. So the closer your hands are to the braid, the tighter that whole braid looks. The further away, like when my hands were up here, they were further down the shaft of the hair, the looser the braid looks. So I'm going to go ahead and take this down. I'll separate this hair in 2 because I like to teach how to do Dutch braiding and French braiding with half the head. It's a little bit easier for beginners to manage, and then I'll pick back up. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and begin on the top of this head of hair. So usually what I like to do is I like to teach with triangle sections of hair. So I'll typically pick up a strand about like this here. Usually I do like to pick up smaller pieces just because it looks more professional when you finish, but I don't want to make it too difficult for my beginners because this is a beginner friendly tutorial. So we're going to keep it a little bit larger here. Now we're going to take those same 2 fingers like we did earlier, and we're just going to go ahead and place in and separate out that hair. If you feel like one of the strands needs a little bit more, you can steal from one and give to the other. That's totally fine. Now, just like I was saying earlier, we're going to go ahead and place this hair in the hands, but then we're going to begin to take from one side under the middle strand, or from the other side under the middle strand, whichever side is more comfortable for you. So I'm going to begin on the right, again, because I'm right-handed and it just makes me a little bit more comfortable. We're going to go ahead and make sure all these pieces are smooth, because the smoother this hair is, the neater it's going to look. By the way, if the person that you're working on has more of a curly or a kinky texture, it does help sometimes to blow that hair out with a blow dryer and smooth it out some. It just makes it a little easier to grip. And usually if the hair is more silky like this, you can mist it with just a little bit of a water. You can use a pomade or a braiding gel to be able to give any hair a bit more grip. But the pomade or braiding gel for any hair, water typically for straighter hair textures, don't soak it, just a light mist. All right, so I'm going to start on the right. We're going to go ahead and take that under the middle, and I'm going to smooth this hair out, just making sure everything is nice and smooth. Then from here, I'm going to come from the left under the middle, smooth it out. So you see those bubbles right there? We want to make sure that those bubbles are nice and smooth. That way it gives everything a nice and neat appearance. So if you'll notice, for those two strands, we had hair coming from the outside of the section. But for this one here, as we bring it under, there's no hair coming with it. So what we want to do is we want to just slide our finger across here. We're going to add into that strand that's going to pass underneath, smooth it out, and pull it underneath the middle strand. Then from there, this strand here I'm not really going to be working with, so I'm just going to ball it up in my hand. I'm going to grab this strand here, and then we're going to hold this one on the left side while we begin to slide across the scalp, pick up that hair, smooth it out, and add it into my outside strand over there. And we just gradually begin to pass that under the middle. Gripping this hair on the other side, we're going to begin to do the same thing. So sliding on across, picking up that hair, smoothing out, and passing under the middle. And you'll notice my finger does not come all the way across. You want to stop your finger when you're sliding across to pick up hair. Stop it right about the center where you want that braid to be. From there, I'm just going to go ahead and grip this hair, coming back to the other side, sliding across, pick up that hair, add it to the outside strand, and we're going to pass it under the center. Now, one of the key things that you want to keep in mind as you're working on this is trying to keep your size of your sections pretty neat that you're picking up and pretty consistent in size. So if your sizes are all over the place, your braid is going to look like it's all over the place as well. So if you're picking up a big piece, a small piece, a big piece, it tends to look a little wonky. If you're sticking with similar sizes all the way through, it gives it a bit more of a neat look and feel to it. From there, we're just coming back to this side, doing the same thing. Now, if you want your braids to look even more tight, you can go ahead and use smaller subsections. So like these little pieces that we're picking up along the way, you can go ahead and use smaller sections of hair like that. So I'm just moving this hair up so you guys can see a little bit better. Smooth that hair out and pass under the center. Now, one thing that I also notice is if you are working with this hair and it's your first time doing a braid like this, especially if you're accustomed to a different style of braiding, talk yourself through the process like I talk you through the process. So telling yourself, pick hair up on the right, add it to the outside strand, take it under the middle strand, move to the left, pick hair up on the left, add it to the outside strand, take it under the outside or under the middle strand into the middle, move back to the right. It helps you to stay focused on where it is that you're going, because a lot of times if you're brand new at a style of braids, you are accustomed to working more so with the creative side of the brain. But the problem is this is a brand new style of braiding for you, so you're not really able to tap into the creative as much yet. That being said, if you're appealing to the side of the brain that's accustomed to learning and picking up new information first, you can go ahead and learn how to assimilate that information before you pass it over to the creative side and begin getting things a little bit more complex. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start taking some smaller pieces just so you can see the difference in what it looks like when you take smaller subsections versus larger ones. I want you to see how much this braid begins to look like it tightens up just from me taking smaller sections. So I'm going to go to a much smaller braiding size. This is one way for you to be able to make your braids look more neat and tight without having to grip or pull that hair tighter and cause any discomfort to yourself or your client. It just allows you to get a bit more of a neat outcome on there. Now also, if you're braiding and you notice that your knuckles are beginning to hurt, things like that, there's a high likelihood that you're gripping that hair a little too hard. Soften up your grip some. You don't have to grip and do it real tight to where your hands are hurting, especially if you're doing this all the time. The last thing you want to do is cause any type of pain to your hands as you are working. It can cause a lot of issues with your hands down the road. So this is with me using smaller subsections. So I don't know if you can tell the difference between like how much more snug it looks up here versus how much looser it looks right there. That's literally just off of the size of the subsections getting smaller. And also, if you'll notice, see how my braid stays in the center here? If you're noticing that your braid tends to like kind of flow downward on one side and kind of upward on the other, usually what that means is your hands are positioned a bit differently. The braid ends up basically wherever you're placing those hands. So if I'm keeping my hands right in the center of this section, it's going to braid down the center of this section. If I am keeping my hands a bit more like towards the upper portion, my braids are going to sit higher. If I'm keeping them lower, they're going to sit lower. So wherever you are positioning your body and your hands at, that's where that hair tends to follow. Now, once you begin to move behind the ear, especially on a client, you want to go ahead and begin to tilt the head forward. Now, on a mannequin, it doesn't matter because you are not dealing with any type of pain, things like that. But with a live client, you have a few things to worry about in terms of causing issues with hair loss, damage, things like that from doing braids incorrectly or too tight. So we want to make sure that as we're coming back here to the back of the head, that we are tilting that head forward because it stretches the skin on the neck. That way, as we're braiding, it's not uncomfortable for the client, and when they look down later, it doesn't feel excessively tight. This prevents you from getting any type of bumps, pulling, hair loss, things like that along the nape of the neck. Also, if you'll notice, when I get back here, because there's less hair here than there is on this side for me to work with, I'm going to begin taking smaller sections on this side of the braid and larger sections on this side. And it's just a gradual change. So we'll just lightly go under here. I'm going to pick up a bigger section on this side, add it into the outside strand, pass that on under, smaller section on this side. And I want to do that just to kind of keep the size of the braid balanced out so I don't end up with a braid that begins turning at the end from having run out of hair to pick up on one side. Now, if you notice, this piece here is really bumpy. I don't know if you can catch that on camera or not, but you can kind of see the frizz and things. So I'm just going to stop, grip all of this hair in my hand, smooth it all out, and then from there I'm going to begin to pass under. Now, of course, if you don't have fingernails, things like that, you can use a comb as well to give you very clean, precise partings. One of the things about Dutch braiding and French braiding that sets them apart is when you have clean and precise, consistent size partings, it helps to give more of a professional look to your braids, and it just makes your quality level look significantly better. But while we're on the topic of quality, if you're going through the process of learning, I will tell you, even if you get frustrated, keep on braiding. Don't give up. Don't take it down. If it's looking messy, walk yourself through the process. Talk your way through it, just like I talk you through it, and continue braiding. I see so many students of mine that end up giving up and they are getting frustrated. They're throwing mannequins. They're doing all sorts of stuff. But when it comes down to it, if you continue braiding and you work your way through that frustration, you'll see what's going on and you'll see what you need to work on. And it allows you to gradually get better and notice your progress. Another thing that I always tell my students to do is your first braid, take a picture of that. That way, when you're doing your future braids moving forward, you have something to compare it to so you can see your own growth. And then that way you don't get discouraged looking at it and thinking it doesn't quite look like it did in the video. It allows you to see exactly what your improvement is. I've been doing this for almost, oh Lord, it's been over 20 years now. I've been braiding hair. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for most individuals. I don't want you to compare your work to mine in terms of considering what your work should look like if you're just learning. It's great for you to aspire to get there, but it's not going to happen on the very first time. So from there, I'm going to switch into a standard underhand braid, and we're just braiding that on down the shaft of the hair. And if you'll notice, my hand position had to change. That's why I showed you the two different positions, because when I was up there, my hand position was more like this. But now as I've come down towards the bottom, I flip that hand position and it turns into this here. I hope that this video makes sense. If you learned something from it or you feel like it was beneficial, let me know in the comment section down below. If you did like it, feel free to check out any of the videos that you currently see on screen. And of course, if you like other videos like this or you're interested in the other content that we may post, please feel free to subscribe. Until next time, you guys, take care, God bless, and stay glam. You know I love you, boo. And I hope that you are doing wonderfully today. Bye-bye.